Pilot Training Flight Simulator, or more commonly known as PTFS, and the most popular aviation-based game on Roblox. This isn't by a small margin either. It's a game with an incredibly loyal fanbase and an active development team which is constantly pioneering new features and techniques seen nowhere else on the Roblox platform. PTFS truly is the flagship game for aviation on Roblox. But how does it attain this kind of status? What gives it such an edge over competing flight simulators? Where did it come from and where's it going next? I'm going to be looking into all of these and more. And with all that said, let's rewind to the beginning. The game we now call Pilot Training Flight Simulator was created on the 4th of January 2010 by a British developer by the name of Orange12345. When it was first released, the game was simply called Pilot Training, and there's very little media from these first few years of the game's existence. However, we do still know a considerable amount due to Orange releasing the game Pilot Training Original, which is assumed to be a near-perfect copy of the game from around 2011. A game that is still up for PTFS fans to try out and enjoy to this day. Playing this version of the game, what strikes you is the sheer simplicity of every model and every bit of terrain. This original version of PTFS was created at a time where developers had a lot fewer tools to create the intricate worlds we're used to today. As well as this, players' computers weren't as powerful, and they didn't have the ability to run much more than these blocky landscapes.
I remember one night I was playing with a few friends, maybe 7 or whatever in a server, and it was getting late, so I was like, right, I'm going to go off now. And a few players were joining, so I was like, that's pretty good. And then I woke up the next morning and it was on the front page. I was like, oh, nice.
The initial overnight success of Pilot Training was almost certainly due to players who were interested in aviation not really having any other alternative, with the game being one of the first of its kind on the Roblox platform, in the fact that it's a flight-based sandbox where players could free fly and socialise with their friends. It became a pioneer in its area, and this focus still holds true in the game's current form. In June of 2011, Orange decided to host a competition in which players could design a new aircraft for the game, and despite some slightly dubious looking models being entered, most of the aircraft offered up were actually very creative, and some even looked fairly ahead of their time considering the limited tools that the models were working with. A MiG-21 built by Vinky40 won the contest and remained in the game until sometime between 2014 and 2015. Although there is not much gameplay footage originating from the game in these early years, this video, posted by the channel Alvi, originates from the 22nd of May 2011 and is thought to be the oldest surviving footage of the game, and was found by the popular PTFS YouTuber Mr. Bullsfan. This was before the time that players had ready access to recording software, and as well as this, there was no Discord servers or any other group forums where the content could have been posted, leaving little incentive for players to document this period. This means that one of the most important sources for information between this huge 2011 to 2014 period is Orange's model inventory, which, luckily for us, he keeps public. This, combined with web archive sites, allows us to get a much better idea of what the game page used to look like. What we do know is that between 2013 and 2014, the game became Pilot Training Revamped, and saw the game's map and aircraft undergo huge remodels. It's also assumed that this is when Orange's older brother Coda QWERTY became more active in the development of the game. Coda QWERTY, who is also well known for being the creator of the incredibly popular long-running Napoleonic warfare game Blood and Iron, had likely always lent a helping hand to Orange, owing to the fact that he is in fact his older brother. However, it's about this time that he assumed the position of primary coder, a role that he would maintain for many years, adding new features on top of the plane kit, such as the fuel bar, and even creating entirely new systems from scratch, including the game's custom menus, radar systems, and helicopter scripts. Orange openly admitted that during this time period, Pilot Training Revamped's main rival in the flight simulator genre would be Dynamic Flight Simulator, a game that for a while would hold a significant player advantage over his game before it was eventually shut down shortly after 2014. It was around this time of competition that the game saw massive updates in both its map and aircraft. Soon came the addition of points, a system that publicly rewarded players that flew through hoops dotted around the map. And finally, in 2015 came the first aircraft spawn systems, allowing players to spawn any of the game's aircraft at any of the dedicated points found at each airport, instead of relying on finding the correct red spawn button. As the aircraft got larger and more realistic, it was found that players wouldn't be able to jump up and into many of the large planes without assistance. So small truss ladders would hang from the forward doors of many of the airliners, and then disappear when the landing gear key was pressed. These soon were made partly, and then eventually fully transparent over time, before being removed entirely to be replaced with a simple "get in" prompt. This video from January of 2014 shows more historic footage of the game, which we now call PTFS, and shows other strange and interesting features no longer present, including this meme button on the menu, which when clicked would play this sound effect. Some of the game's removed passes include a VIP pass from PTFS's infancy, which would allow players into a special black aircraft, as well as a security game pass, which would grant players access to a set of handcuffs, as well as a pistol. However, both of these were just for roleplay purposes and wouldn't work on other players. In 2016, noticing that the popular Roblox game Row Force Rescue Mission had just been taken down by Roblox moderators, Orange sensed a chance to capitalise on this, making his own take on the format, using PTFS's assets to create Pilot Training Rescue Squadron, a game that for a time was hugely successful before the updates for it ceased in 2021. The game is still up to this day, however, and is still just as fun as it was in its heyday, when it peaked around 300 concurrent players. Although PTFS has maintained a consistent player base thus far, it wasn't until Orange overhauled the map in July of 2017 that the game exploded in popularity. This huge 2017 map update added many of the airfields still present in the game today, including Greater Rockford. Other than the layout of Greater Rockford International Airport, as well as the addition of a few seaplane bases, it's amazing to see that in over 4 years, the island of Rockford has barely changed at all. And speaking of Greater Rockford, many players often argue what real-life airport it's based on, and while some argue that it's Marseille Airport in France, the real-life Rockford Airport in Chicago, or even Dubai International Airport, Orange has stated on Discord that it's actually based on Manchester Airport in the UK, and whilst they may not have much in common anymore, if you look at the airport back as it was when it was first added in 2018, you can see that the runway layout is very similar. In 2019, a fan of the game called Samisage worked his way up from group helper to developer after offering his assistance to Orange, with his first addition to the game being the Air Force One game pass. Sam soon became the game's secondary coder, and then, as coder QWERTY stepped back from working on the game, became PTFS's primary coder, adding many of the game's most high-tech features not seen anywhere else on Roblox. And from this point onwards, PTFS's history becomes a lot more well known, since the game was a lot more popular with many YouTubers documenting the game's progress, as well as them being logged in the game's Discord server. However, some of the features that have been removed in the last few years include planes exploding and despawning upon crashing, missions, as well as airline liveries, owing to copyright issues. Luckily for players, many of these features have now been re-added in recent updates, if just in different forms. One of the last big milestones thus far in PTFS's history that I simply cannot exclude would be the Victory for Vulcan campaign, led by Samisage in 2020. This was a fundraiser that ended up collecting over $2,300 for the Vulcan Restoration Trust at Southend Airport in the UK, a charity that maintains one of the last surviving Avro Vulcan bombers, capable of moving under its own power. The campaign only lasted 2 weeks, but it hit its initial goal within just a few hours of going live, and raised some much needed money for the charity. Since then, all of the donators have got their names put on the tail of the white Avro Vulcan in-game, as well as the inside of RAF Scampton. The game will celebrate its 15th birthday on the 4th of January 2025, and as long as it keeps up its player count near to recent figures, then by this key birthday, PTFS is predicted to reach over 600 million visits. Pilot Training Flight Simulator is what I call a social sandbox, in which players can do whatever they want with the resources provided, and interact with other players as they see fit. There are no rules other than the ones of the Roblox platform, and no real restrictions on where you can and cannot go. The game just provides you with an open world and the large list of aircraft and says off you go. This simplicity and freedom, combined with the diversity of environments and aircraft, is what makes the game so popular. It allows players to do almost anything they can think of, from video making to landing competitions to air shows, and with the game giving players many unique features, such as multiplayer cockpits and air traffic control, players are encouraged to interact and fly together. Although the game's style is incredibly simplistic, even compared to other Roblox flight simulators, it makes it accessible to any level of aviation enthusiast, no matter the level of competency. This is reflected in the game's flight mechanics having two distinct modes, normal and advanced, with the game's normal flight modes being a simple plane follows the mouse style of control, whilst advanced mode allows aircraft to perform rolls and loops. Although neither of these modes are too complicated, even by the standards of many Roblox games, it gives players all the controls and precision they would need to perform any manoeuvre that would typically be conceived. One of the biggest aspects of the game for many players is the exploration. The game encourages this too, with over 25 Easter eggs all around the map for players to find and collect badges for. The map is completely built with the express purpose of being flown around, and so on Rockford Island alone you can find wind turbines to dart between, valleys to trace through, flying rings, bridges and pylons to fly through, and beaches to land on, just to name a few. Game passes are also a substantial part of PTFS's identity, which when purchased, provide players with more tools and toys to add to their sandbox experience. Whether that's a new aircraft, an outfit picker, or even access to air traffic control towers and a free cam. Many players understandably dislike this, as those who can't afford to pay real world money to buy these add-ons will be missing out. And with the younger age demographic that a game like PTFS brings, that's going to be a fair chunk of the player base that has no access to these game passes. However, comparing the prices between these passes and ones for other Roblox flight sims, you'll find that they're actually pretty decently priced for what you receive, and the quality of each model is fully in line for what's already in the base game, meaning that players who do decide to purchase one of these passes should already have a good idea of what they'll be receiving, hopefully negating any player from feeling ripped off. Every vehicle in the game is unique, and it's a really fun experience trying to figure out each plane. Large airliners and freighters feel heavy and can be a pain to turn, whilst fighter aircraft are quick and nimble, much more suited to aerobatic manoeuvres than their larger counterparts. Many planes are even fast enough to break the sound barrier, which, when you surpass, breaks with a satisfying loud bang, loud enough to be heard by all players in the area. Some of the display aircraft, such as the Red Arrow's Hawk or the Blue Angel's F-18, even have smoke, which is just asking for players to use it to create some stunning visual displays. My favourite of these hidden features is the A-10 Warthog that has a working minigun. Despite all of these features, however, the main draw that keeps pulling players back in is simply the satisfaction of nailing that perfect landing on a runway that really shouldn't be big enough, or darting through valleys at almost twice the speed of sound. It's the way that PTFS feels. It's incredibly unique and draws from both the simplicity of its core mechanics and graphics, combined with just the right level of complexity that means that the game makes you feel like a skilled pilot without making it inaccessible to new players. The community of Pilot Training Flight Simulator probably has the lowest average age of any other major Roblox flight sim, yet despite this, the community is both incredibly tight-knit and incredibly passionate both about the game in which they reside, as well as the aircraft within it. PTFS has one of the strongest YouTube presences I've ever known for any Roblox game, with many popular YouTubers such as Wes, Southie, Rin Stablestorm, and Mr. Bulls Fan racking up huge audiences with tens of thousands of subscribers, whilst even larger YouTubers such as Ceniac, Swiss001 and CB having all played the games on their channel too, meaning that the game has more than enough exposure online. One of the most prominent ways that PTFS is shared is through its many films. These short cinematic pieces tell stories usually centred around commercial aircraft having emergencies, and will regularly garner hundreds of thousands of views. Joining the Pilot Training Club Discord server, you'll find channels filled with players comparing their landings, screenshots and independent groups. As well as being a place for just general discussion, loyal players have a place to submit bugs and glitches, as well as their suggestions for what they think should be added to the game next. The community has even gone as far as to make in-depth charts for the whole map with every single of the game's airport on it, with this coming in most useful for PTFS's official roleplay server, ATC24. ATC24 is an official private server which can only be joined by players that complete very specific joining criteria to get into. ATC24 isn't the only roleplay group grounding itself in the game, however. Hundreds of independently run groups replicating civil, military and commercial operations all thrive in their own Discord and private servers. Because they're fully independent and receive no direct support from the game's developers or moderators, they have to try and survive on their own merit, requiring trailers, banners and constantly hosted activities to both try and acquire players as well as keep them. These social interactions between players, whether on Discord or in-game, however large or small, is where PTFS really shines, and yet I feel it's the most underappreciated. PTFS lives off of its community, and it's the staff behind the scenes acknowledging and capitalising on it through the game's design that gives PTFS the edge over other competing games. It gives players a chance to talk about aviation with other people who share a passion for the subject, giving common ground for absolute beginners to talk to and ask more experienced individuals about what, without PTFS, could potentially be incredibly complicated. When you take a step back and look at Pilot Training Flight Simulator for what it really is, it's an incredibly powerful tool for getting young people interested in aviation and helps nurture this passion through the community that thrives within. This simple game, developed primarily by only 3 people, is a better tool for this job than any interactive website that any real-life airline or air force has ever made when it comes to getting young people interested in what they do. People criticise the game's simplicity for not being realistic enough, and those that do, fundamentally do not understand the game or why it's popular. When many players reach a point where they're interested enough, many will branch out to other and more complex flight simulators. Where they go from that, who knows? But the number of people who must have been inspired to chase a dream of becoming a pilot themselves, stemming from this game, in my opinion, must be at least in the hundreds. The game may not be perfect, no game is, but it has been masterfully crafted into the perfect entry-level flight simulator that can teach anyone to fly in a matter of minutes, and create a fun experience out of it. It's a common misconception that PTFS is dying. It's a phrase thrown around primarily by smaller YouTubers, but that is categorically untrue. PTFS's player numbers continue to climb, and there are publicly available graphs to confirm this. With the developers updating the game frequently enough to hold players while simultaneously expanding their scope through new ways to play, such as on mobile, the game is continuously hitting new milestones, and the community grows stronger every day. And speaking of new developers, whilst there is so much going on in Pilot Training Flight Simulator, it's often easy to forget that the game is being worked on by such a small development team. Out of the 4 names listed in the credits, only 3 of them work directly on the game. Orange, of course, being the creator, has undoubtedly done the majority of the work to create PTFS. Sam, as previously mentioned, is now the game's primary coder, taking over from coder QWERTY, and has been responsible for the game's main aircraft scripts, as well as a plethora of other features found in the game. Unlike the other devs, QWERTY hasn't spoken publicly about his role within PTFS, but Sam has said before that he sees QWERTY as a more experienced developer who steps in and helps with the more complicated coding problems every now and then, but he just doesn't have the same amount of time to dedicate to the game as the others. Most of the new aircraft and features added to the game start life as a simple suggestion posted to the game's Discord server, where the most requested and most interesting features will be looked at with reference to how long it will take to develop and how much the community would get out of it.
It's really just a case of, like, I guess a mini checklist for an idea before we start making it. Will it take an incredibly long time? Now, the one thing that did pass that, and I still did it despite it taking a really long time, was the new plane kit.
Yeah,
but I feel like that was kind of overdue almost. It was essential for the game to allow for further sort of updates to be made.
Orange, being the game's main builder, is of course responsible for creating every single island, airport and aircraft found in-game. Yet, despite the huge amount of man-hours put into creating all of these assets, Orange admitted that the majority of his time is actually put into optimising the game and making it run smoother, especially for lower-end devices and mobiles. One of PTFS's standout features is its simple style that gives it a distinctive look, but at the same time reduces the load on players' computers. It's not quite low poly, but it's really not too far off either, with many background objects such as cars and buildings literally only being made up of a single part. Every tree on every island was placed by Orange by hand, with there originally being over 50% more on many of the islands, before Orange deleted them in the name of optimization. Something that many players don't realise is that in order to give PTFS such a large map, the entire world has been created at 1/2 scale, meaning that compared to a regular Roblox avatar, all PTFS assets are 50% smaller than they'd be in other games. It's not an uncommon trick. Flightline, Project Flight and Aeronautica all use the same idea to increase their map sizes. However, PTFS is one of the only games where you can get out and your player model will behave relatively normally. The reason for scaling down the map is because of a Roblox limitation present in every game. That means if players or models go too far away from what's known as the 0 point, the centre of the game world, assets will start to visually glitch, and models might not always behave quite as they should.
One thing people always ask me is, why don't you add more islands? And I think they don't understand it's the limitations of the game engine. I can't build further out because the game starts glitching incredibly badly because of something called floating point errors. You might notice it when you're flying at like Perth or Isolrani, for example, one of the further out islands from Rockford, that your screen shakes or decals like flash as they're Z fighting with like the parts behind them.
Finally, one of the game's best features is the openness that the developers have about the inner workings of the game. Throughout this video, I've been using short quotes from both Samisage and Orange, who have both sat down for hours of their time to talk with me about their game. Links to the full interviews are in the description, by the way. On top of this, Orange keeps his inventory open, giving us a way to glimpse into the inner workings of the games and see how it's made. One of the biggest examples of this would be the aircraft development game, which is a public way to check in with what's being added to the game. It's this kind of community engagement that rewards players for being curious and looking through these slightly obscure Roblox pages that makes PTFS ever more exciting. It encourages players to share and talk about their findings. This, combined with Sam sharing new update features in dedicated update videos, makes the game feel more personal, and this very clever way of drip-feeding players hints about what's coming next helps retain interest, creates a buzz online, and overall increases player retention. And yet, after talking to the developers, I can tell that it's not done for these reasons, and if anything, it's just a happy coincidence that this way of teasing features and allowing players to discover them for themselves. It's just because they do it purely because they love creating and interacting with their player base. I truly don't believe that Sam's update videos are strategic in any way to try and increase the game's stats. Sure, it might be a bonus, but I'm certain it's just because he enjoys making them and loves seeing the community's reaction to his hard work. The same could be said about almost everything in PTFS. Sure, it's a job for them, but they're not doing it because they have to. You can tell from the sheer pace that content is added, even down to the excitement behind each update video, that developers love their creation. Having met Orange in person now on several occasions, and having known Sam personally for several years now in real life, I can tell you with absolute certainty that PTFS is a game in which these two put so much passion and hard work, a passion that rubs off onto all that play their game, and I'm sure that has sparked a love of aviation inside of thousands of players throughout PTFS's 13-year history. Pilot Training Flight Simulator, despite what many people online will tell you, it's not dying. It's in the best place it's ever been, and with no doubt will continue to grow as long as its developer continue to share their passion with us. Pilot Training Flight Simulator, more commonly known as PTFS, and the most popular aviation-based game on Roblox. Truly the flagship game for aviation on Roblox, and in my opinion, that's why. And there you have it, the incredible journey of Pilot Training Flight Simulator. From its humble beginnings as simply pilot training to becoming the crown jewel of aviation on Roblox, PTFS has captured the hearts and imaginations of players around the world. Through its simplicity and pioneering spirit, PTFS has carved a path for flight simulators on Roblox, offering a sandbox where young aviation enthusiasts can nurture their love of the industry and learn more about what they enjoy. The dedication of its development team, constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, has ensured that PTFS remains at the forefront of innovation in the gaming world. But PTFS is more than just a game. It's a vibrant community, a place where pilots of all skill levels can come together and share their passion for aviation, engage in thrilling air shows, and embark on unforgettable journeys. With PTFS soon to celebrate its 15th birthday and looks to the future, the sky is absolutely the limit. With upcoming features and updates, the game looks ready to continue delivering this experience for many more years to come. PTFS will keep captivating both seasoned PTFS pilots and those taking their first steps into the world of aviation. PTFS is and will continue to be Roblox's largest and greatest flight simulator, and like you, I can't wait to see what comes next. As I'm finishing this, the very first bits of script for this video were written over 18 months ago, and whilst the work has very much been on and off over those months, I'm still just very happy to just be done with this video and finally release it to you guys. New videos are of course being worked on and will be out very soon, although, let's be honest, they're definitely going to be shorter than this. Until then, thank you very much for watching, please consider subscribing, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, Patron out.